Hi everyone. In this video we'll talk about session window in Spark Streaming. So we are going to talk about what is session window, why it is used, and then we will see an example of that. So let's get started. So what exactly is session window? So let's see. Session window is a concept that was introduced in Spark 3.2. So prior to that there was no concept of session window here. In the last videos we saw tumbling window and sliding window. So in tumbling window you saw that the windows do not ever overlap, right? And the windows were of fixed size. In sliding window you saw the windows can overlap, right? And the input can fall in multiple windows, right? So the characteristic of session window is that it can have dynamic window size. So the next characteristic is it can expand itself if input is received during gap duration. So what is gap duration here? Let's assume we are visiting a website and we are logging in, and there is a timeout of 5 minutes, which means that if we do not do anything or we show inactivity of at least 5 minutes, then our session will be timeout. That means the gap duration is 5 minutes. Most of the banking websites have this kind of a gap duration where if you are inactive for a few minutes, then your session will be timed out. So this characteristic means if there is an input received during the gap duration, let's say duration is 5 minutes, so within that 5 minutes if it is receiving the input, then it will keep on expanding itself. Just imagine it like a session. Your session will keep expanding. And what will happen if there is no input received during the gap duration? Your session will be closed. So it is exactly similar to the session timeout. So why session window is used? The main use of session window is if you want to implement sessionization kind of thing, then you can use session window concept. We'll see an example here. So let's say this is the stream of events and the user is U1 and user is coming on the website at time T1. Let's say the user clicked something and then again clicked at time T2. Now let's say for 5 minutes the user did not click anything. So at time Tn the user session was timed out. Now what will be the session window that will be created in Spark? It will be T1, which is the start time when the user came, and then T2 when the last activity was performed by the user plus 5 minutes, because 5 minutes is the gap duration that we are giving. So the window will be T1 to T2 plus 5. Now let's understand it better with a better example. So I have listed down some events here. So there are two columns, event ID and timestamp. We are assuming a gap duration of 5 minutes, which means if there is no any input event, then the session will be timed out. The main point to understand here is how does Spark calculate the session window for these events, that we will see in this example. So let's consider the first event. The first event is at time 12:30. Now the second event is at time 12:30, which is obviously less than 5 minutes. This is again a 30-second duration, which is 12:31, and then we have 12:35, which is 4 minutes of gap here. 31 plus 4 is 35. Now the last event is this one. The first event was this one. So the last event was received, let's say for this event 101 was at time 12:35. So what Spark will do, it will add 5 minutes, the gap duration that we provided, to this event, and it will finalize the event. So for this event ID, the window will be 12:30 to 12:40, right? And how many times did this particular event ID came? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So total count will be 4. Now our session for 101 is finalized and count is ready. So if you see this here, see the output here. So 101 is the event ID, and the session window that is calculated by the Spark is from 12:30 to 12:40, which I mentioned here, and the count is 4. Let's consider this the next set of events. The gap duration is again 5 minutes. So if you see, these are all 33 plus 2 is 35, which is less than 5 minutes. Then 35 and 37, again the duration is only 2 minutes. So the last event, the first event is at 12:33, the last event is at 12:37. Spark will add 5 minutes to this particular timestamp, so it will become 12. 42, so which is this one. So the event ID 102, the window start is 12:33, window end is 12:42, and the count is 3 because there were 3 events received. This one is interesting here. Now event ID is 103, start of the timestamp is 12:30:30. Then if you see, these are all less than 5 minutes. The last seen event was at time 12:31:50. So let's add 5 minutes. So what it will become? So Spark will finalize it. Although 103 is again coming in, but this is 12:45:50. So if you see this gap is greater than 5 minutes. So Spark will finalize this event and the window will be calculated. So this is what it is displayed here, 12:30:30, which is this event, and then we have 12:36:50, which is nothing but 12:31:50 plus 5, and this the count is 3 because these are the 3 events within that particular session. So if you can imagine, this user 103 came on the website at 12:30:30 and last perform an activity at 12:31:50. So the user session was finalized and the session was timed out at 12:36:50. This will be considered as a new session. So the start time of the session will be for this the same user, but the start window time will be 12:45:50, which is this one, and there was no any further clicks or events received for this particular event ID. Then it will be finalized, so which means plus 5, which becomes 12:50:50, and then the count is 1. So if you see the same user ID, different session windows because of the gap duration. So I hope you are able to understand what exactly is session window, why it is used, and then with this example you might have understood it better. Now we are going to see an example code for the same. So this is the data file. These are the event ID and the timestamp. I have listed all the data in this sample data session window.txt file. So we'll be reading this data file and the Spark will be creating the session window from this data. So let's see the code. We are creating a Spark session here. We are using the spark.implicits here. Again, if you're not aware of Spark implicits, I have created a video for that. You can have a look at that. We are giving the file path. We are creating a dataset by reading the text file, whatever the data we have given here. This is comma separated event ID and timestamp. We are reading the line as string, and then what we are doing is we are splitting by comma, and then we are creating, this is the first 0 means the event ID and 1 means the timestamp. So it is creating a tuple here, and then we are creating the data frame, and I am giving the names as event ID and timestamp for the 2 columns. We are just printing the schema. We are also trying to show the data frame that we have created. Now this is the code that is creating the session window. If you see this final df with column timestamp, we are converting that to timestamp because this is of string type when we initially read it from the data file. We are grouping by the event ID, and this is the concept here, the session window. It's very easy to use. You just give session window function and then give the timestamp and give the gap duration. We also need the count of the sessions, right? So this count operation is for that. Finally, we are printing the schema and also printing the results. So let's run it. All right. So based on the example that we discussed, I am not going to explain this. I'll just leave this up to you. You can run this example and then go through this code. So what I will suggest is go through this example, experiment with it, give some different gap durations and see how it is behaving. All the code is available in GitHub. You can also change the timestamps of the data file to see how it is behaving. So when you will experiment with it, then you will get more confidence. So that's it for this video. See you in the next video. Happy learning.